Oleksii, good morning. Good morning. Good morning, dear commissioners. I'm happy to see you again. The pleasure is all ours. Since your interview was previously interrupted, we will resume it from the 25th minute. But for us to get the ball rolling, could you please refresh in our memory our impression of you? We're giving you the floor for a very short self-introduction. You will be given some 2 minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll proceed with the questions. So let me remind everyone, my name is Oleksii Domashenko. I have a PhD in law. I work at the National Law Academy named after Yaroslav Mudry. And for almost 18 years, I've been teaching at the Department of Criminal Law. Currently, I'm serving in the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and I've been in the army since February of 2022. That is with regards to my main career. As far as my vision of the judiciary is concerned, it's related primarily to reforms in the direction of transparency, enhancement of the integrity of judges. These are the key elements which I consider to be the most important for future judges. That is, if to be brief, about my vision. Thank you, Oleksii. And we will now go back to the question. So we stopped with me asking my questions, and you answered them. And I was about to give the floor to co-rapporteur Tad. So the floor is yours, Tad. You're welcome.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Domashenko. Mr. Domashenko, as part of our review and preparation for interviews such as this one, we of course study carefully your biography as well as your motivation letter. And I was particularly impressed with your motivation letter and the amount of references you make to the service that is being provided by you and colleagues in the defense of Ukraine. Sir, you are very much a patriot of Ukraine, and we certainly, I'm sure, recognize the very valuable contribution that you and your colleagues are making in the defense and liberation of Ukraine. I'm a little interested, Mr. Domashenko, to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about your work at the university. You have been working there for 17 and 18 years as an assistant professor. You have just told us that your main field of interest is criminal law, but I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of indication of the nature and scope of your academic work, your academic interests, and how that will relate to the work and assist you in the work that you would be called to do as a member of the High Qualification Commission.
Thank you for the question. Well, the sphere of my interest is not just criminal law, but it's criminology and judicial expertise and legal psychology. So these are the disciplines that are within my scholarly interests. I'm also interested in criminal procedure, in forensic medicine, but I hope that I will not need this kind of knowledge as a member of HQCJ. I meant forensic medicine. As far as my work at the university is concerned, I'm teaching there, and no teaching happens without assessment. I constantly talk to students, I constantly learn, I constantly try to improve my knowledge. And I try to do my best to be the best teacher at my university. I'm developing different manuals for students, methodological materials, and they definitely include the criteria for the assessment of students, and there is a correlation between the criteria established and the scores that are put by teachers. This is everything about my work at the university. I also have quite an extensive experience of working as a teaching assistant. This probably became one of the factors which explains my desire to change the sphere of work.
Now, how then, Mr. Domashenko, I'll ask a second part of my question then. How then do you think your work at the university will assist you if you should be chosen a member of the HQCJ?
I had experience not with teaching only, but also with the assessment, which could help me with selecting future judges if we have clear-cut and transparent criteria. Also, it's about teamwork. As a member of our department, I was working as part of a team. And even when I changed my profile and I was performing the duties of the head of Circuit Elections Commission, I was again working as part of a team, because you cannot imagine the work of a commission without this feeling of a team. I was in constant communication with government authorities, with journalists, with international observers, and that gave me confidence that I had sufficient skills that could come in handy should I be appointed as an HQCJ member. Of course, at the moment, I'm doing a completely different kind of work, and as my service in the armed forces has shown me, it was really a revelation that I can easily adapt to different circumstances. I can learn quickly. I have mastered 3 military specialties over the previous year. Of course, you cannot imagine not being part of a team when you are in the armed forces, because you are responsible not only for you, for your own life, but for the lives of your comrades. And this is something that contributes to the success of our operations.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. One last question from me. You indicate that you feel that the process of appointment for the position of a judge, that process should be more transparent. Now, what ideas would you bring to the High Qualification Commission as a member in order to increase or improve the transparency of the HQCJ process?
Within the work of HQCJ, I think it will not only be me. The other members of HQCJ will also be thinking about the assessment processes. We need to know what the criteria we are using while assessing the candidates. That is why it is necessary to single out the criteria of integrity, the criteria of judicial ethics. We need to outline some red lines, the things that are tokens of lack of integrity. We also need to think about the decision-making, the decisions that we are making during the meetings of the Commission. The decision-making must be more open and transparent. For instance, when we are scoring some of the tasks, our votes must be given in open, which will result in more trust in the results of our scoring. I also think that the work of PIC is essential during the meetings of the Commission. The PIC does not have official authorities. I think the mandate of the PIC is quite limited as far as access to information is concerned. They get their information from open sources only. They don't have this mandate to request some information from closed registries. Maybe they should be given this mandate, and we should be talking about a symbiosis in the work of HQCJ and PIC, and that will be a token of trust in the judiciary, because the judiciary cannot assess itself. That's why we go to the public, we go to the civil society, and we ask them about their vision as to what they see as integrity of a judge. This is probably the most important thing that I wanted to mention with regards to transparency and openness.
Thank you. I'm going to turn you over, Mr. Domashenko, back to our chief rapporteur. And I see that, Robert, you have some questions, perhaps. Your questions, please.
Yes, thank you. Let's say that you are appointed to the HQCJ, the High Qualification Commission of Judges, and you are called by a person which is very high up in politics, and he tells you that there are a candidate. And you are explained by this person very high up that this is a fantastic candidate and it should be, he should be selected. What would you do?
I think that I will just hang up. I will not be talking to a politician about candidates. And I've never really dealt with any politicians. I don't have immediate experience of working in courts or with courts, but I don't think I can discuss things like that. It will be showing that I myself lack integrity.
Well, and the next, let's say, example. Now you're not called by a politician, but by one of your friends from the army who have the same request?
I'm sure that my friends in the army. No, I will not hang up. Never. I will ask him about his health first. But with regards to their request, I think that he will understand. He shouldn't be asking me for such favors.
And you would tell him?
Yes, I would tell it to him.
Okay. You just discussed being part of a team. What will you discuss with your other members in the commission that you were called by your friend from the army who asked you, said, well, this candidate of tomorrow, he's a fantastic candidate and you should select him?
Maybe I will tell them that I got a phone call from my comrade. I will inform them about the phone call, but I will not be telling them about him asking me for some favors. I will just tell them about the very fact of the phone call taking place. I will not be trying to convince them. This will not be something that we will be considering during the assessment of the very candidate. I will notify the other members of the commission about the phone call, but I will never be insisting on promoting the candidate. I will probably even announce my recusal in this situation.
Well, when I think about this, I find that when you work in a team and you have your mutual responsibility of what happens, and if something strange happens, I would say that the other members should also know. So why would you not tell your colleagues in the commission where you have a responsibility to, that you received a phone call about Mr. or Mrs. X? Because they need to know that there is influence there to have this person selected.
Yes, but that's exactly what I said. I'm going to notify the commission about the phone call taking place. And I will tell about the content of the conversation.
Okay, but then
maybe something was misunderstood, but...
But then your fellow member in the commission, the chairman says, the chairwoman says, thank you. About whom was it? What did they ask? About what candidate did they ask something? That would be a question I would always ask when I would be in this commission. What would you say? It's difficult, huh?
No, it's not difficult. For me, it's not difficult. This is one of the factors that can be treated as behavior that lacks integrity. The team will see that somebody is trying to influence me. And I think that all the other members should also feel their responsibility, and they should also be aware of the corruption risks with regards to themselves and the other members of the commission, because this will affect the entire commission, not just me.
Okay. Let's say that you would tell the other members of the commission that you received a call by someone, maybe not a good friend, but someone else, it was about candidate X and Y. Let's say that you did that you were transparent. Because I find, let's say, it's not easy to say nothing. It's also not easy to say exactly about who it concerned. But let's say that you said it is about Mr. X and Y. And then one of the members says of your commission, well, clearly then we have to select this person. Because you told by whom you were called, and one of your fellow members in the commission says, we should select this person. What would you do?
If that's the only factor that will be part of the decision-making, me letting them know about this phone call and about the candidate, it will be wrong. I think that we need to be more scrupulous about this candidate so that there's no shadow of doubt. No shadow of doubt with regards to impartiality. I think that we need to be more demanding with regards to this candidate.
Yeah. My point is that you told the commission, and one of the commission members says, well, then we need to select this candidate. Then you have an issue with the person who says that, don't you? And you're a member of the team. What would you do about this in the team? If your fellow member in my commission, in our commission, Yevgen, he would say, well, let's select her. What do I do with Yevgen?
You don't do anything with Yevgen. I think that everybody should bear their own responsibility, but the decision is made by the Commission as a whole. I don't think it will in any way affect your relationship.
Let's see, because now it's Yevgen's turn to ask questions.
It will not change my attitude towards this member of HQCJ. I hope that the decision that we are going to make will be based not on the fact of me giving some names, but because the candidate is really professional, it's a person of integrity. Thank you. Thank you, Oleksii. My last name is Mezentsev. My name is Yevhen. I've just been introduced by Robert, so let us continue our communication. So as a realist, as a pragmatic person, that is something that you mentioned in your motivational letter, you probably have some vision with regards to the development of the judiciary. Could you please name two realistic and pragmatic ways to develop the judiciary in the upcoming 5 years, let's say? In my opinion, there are two factors at play here: quality selection of the members of the judiciary and the improvement of the independence of judges. So these are the two main directions in which the judiciary reform should go. So thank you, that's clear. As far as independence is concerned, don't you think that we have enough regulations that determine the level of judicial independence and judicial guarantees? I think that integrity and independence are two sides of one coin. if we are going to be selecting judges who have integrity, then the judiciary will become more independent as a result. There will be no outside influences. Thank you. Let me ask you a more specific question. Even if we introduce psychological tests during the assessment, during the selection of new judges, what kind of trait should be a priority for a judge? A high level of self-confidence of a candidate judge or a judge, or vice versa, a high level of self-criticism? Because a person is constantly re-evaluating their own actions. What should the priority be, self-confidence or self-criticism? We're talking about future judges. In my opinion, the level of self-criticism should be a priority, not just for a judge, but for me personally, self-criticism is important. Because I understand that not always my decisions are the best, but they are always decisions that have the integrity component. Thank you. In light of what is currently happening in Ukraine against the background of full-scale invasion and our fight with the aggressor, in what way would you organize the work over monitoring and control of citizenship, potential Russian citizenship that candidate judges may have? Because the procedure of issuing of passports on the occupied territory is not controlled by us. How would you study the availability of Russian citizenship? It's a difficult question. I'm not telling you that you need to give us very specific answers, but in what direction would you move? With what bodies would you interact in this context? Of course, we need to interact with the security service of Ukraine, intelligence services. But as far as every particular candidate is concerned, we need to decide it on an individual basis. We need to see what the candidate did to get that citizenship. Maybe... No, I'm not talking about the grounds for getting that citizenship. Maybe the person was coerced into this citizenship. You understand that having citizenship of another country is the criteria that excludes you from participation in the selection. It's not about the grounds for getting the citizenship. It's about how we find out this information. The information that will exclude that person from participation in the selection. Do we need to develop some programs or maybe do something else? Maybe we should also analyze the property and assets that the person has on the temporarily occupied territory or on the territory of the aggressor state. And if they were paying taxes, then yes, that's clear. Thank you. And towards the end, I'm going to ask you this quite personal question. For quite some time, you've been working at a university You've been working at the National Law Academy. Now it's been renamed into a university. It's my alma mater. I also graduated from this university. So, could you please explain why you've been holding one and the same position for so many years? Is it hard for you to change, or are you conservative, or are you satisfied with the level of life that you've had before the full-scale invasion, before February of 2022? You know, a change of profession, a change of professional activities is something that's been quite relevant for me for a long time. It was hard for me to leave my bubble, to leave my comfortable environment, because I did not present my thesis. I presented it in 2018, my PhD thesis, and after that I started thinking about my future steps. I mean about future steps in my professional life. Without completing my PhD thesis, I was unable to switch to something else. So I started doing different things. I was involved with the elections commissions, but the fact of me working on the same position doesn't mean that I didn't want to change something. So we have this sad joke that prior to the war, everybody was looking for people who would help them leave their comfortable environment, and now we are looking for people who would return the situation to the way that it was before the war. So let me ask you the final question. For you, the work in HQCJ will definitely be a huge promotion as far as your career is concerned, as far as your professional life is concerned. So, should you be appointed as an HQCJ member, how difficult is it going to change your lifestyle, to change your place of residence, your living conditions? You will have to leave some of your friends and acquaintances behind. You will have to work with the other 15 members of the Commission whom you have never met before. Is it going to be comfortable, psychologically comfortable for you? Maybe a year ago, I would ask myself this question, but now I have the answer. For me, it's definitely not important under which conditions I'm working. It's important that I work within one team, a team of like-minded people. So you mentioned something about me changing my work. I've already had this experience in the past while working in the Elections Commission. I wasn't really knowledgeable about the election legislation, but that experience did give me an impetus to achieve some goal through self-improvement, through learning the procedures. And nowadays, I constantly meet new people, new units, and communication holds the first place. It's a priority, and we do have one goal: to win. And all the other factors are secondary. Thank you, you're absolutely correct. The war has made all Ukrainians into people of steel. Thank you. With that, I'm passing the floor to Stephen.
Thank you very much for participating here, Professor Domashenko. We appreciate you taking that time to do that. Let me ask you a question about judicial immunity. I think that's a pretty important issue, and I'll explain why I think that. You know, I've been in thousands of judicial cases of my own, and in every one of them, there was a winner and a loser. And
the loser is often very disappointed with losing and sometimes upset and unhappy and blames the judges or blames the jury, but not often does he or she blame himself or herself. Is it a good thing for a judge in every case to be thinking about whether there may be a lawsuit or there may be some liability that he has to face from the losing party? Is that something that really will enhance the independence of a judge who's trying to look at the parties fairly and not trying to question which of the parties is going to be more aggressive in suing him in court if they decide that that's what they want to do? I certainly think that there's some argument in favor of your position where there's corruption or this purposeful disregard of what the law is and ignoring the law. But do you really want the losing party in every case to have the potential to go to court?
I think a judge must be impartial in any case. It's one of the requirements for judges. But a judge should be following the law only. It's one of the criteria for making lawful judgments and decisions. That is why paying attention to potential lawsuits coming from the losing party, I don't think that this is something that will result in the efficiency of the work of such judge. Vice versa, if they made a lawful and just decision, it will be not just for the winning parties, but for the outsiders, it will be something positive for them both. Why are we lacking trust in the judiciary? It's because some of the decisions made by judges don't really follow the law. And we see that justice is not served by them making these decisions.
But would you think that if there's an appellate panel that's making a decision and there's some dissent on that panel, that there's always one side or the other that's not following the law? Or there may be just reasonable and responsible disagreements as to what difficult laws require or what difficult provisions actually mean?
Sorry, could you please clarify your question?
Well, you're suggesting that
if it's possible to clarify.
Yeah, you're suggesting that a judge will only face a lawsuit under the circumstances you're proposing when he's not acting in accord with the law. I'm suggesting that acting in accord with the law is sometimes a very difficult thing to determine. And every time you have a dissent and a majority opinion on some court, you can always say one side is ignoring the law, but reasonable people can sometimes differ, can't they? But there still will be a winning and a losing party in those cases.
I think that if the party disagrees with the decision made, they can go to a court of a high level. It's possible that they can still win. It doesn't mean that they have doubts about the competence of the judge or the lawfulness of the decision made. But if it's possible to appeal the decision, then they can use this mechanism. I think that the losing party has every right to do that.
Well, I would just ask that you perhaps give some further consideration to this, because I think this is an issue in which reasonable people can also differ, and the appellate process is, of course, the traditional way by which bad decisions are corrected. But I just raised the question to you for your consideration. You say in your motivation letter, Professor Domashenko, I dream of an independent and just judiciary, but I know that dreams are not enough. A team, values, and political will are important to gain a result. I wonder if it isn't even more difficult than that. The reform process in Ukraine has gone on for many years. Many people are tired of the process. I think the process has to work this time. There will be opponents of reform that you'll be facing. There'll be barriers. There'll be obstacles. There'll be people who disagree with you. You'll even have differences with your colleagues on the High Qualifications Commission if you're elevated to that position. How will you make a difference in the face of all these barriers that have stood in the way of judicial reform for so many years?
Yes, indeed. Reforms cannot happen forever. It doesn't promote just decision-making. It will probably also entail additional corruption risks, because we will constantly have to complete some assessment procedures, and the fact of somebody failing to complete their qualification assessment does not promote normal work of the judiciary. But in my opinion, the reform will be over when the civil society is satisfied. And they are satisfied because all of the procedures, I mean the selection of judges, they are more transparent. Why are we paying so much attention to the work of PIC? That is because it's one of the possible way to involve the civil society in the process of government. It's a way to get access to justice. That is why I think the reform will be over when we manage to accomplish this. I mean the selection of professional judges and increase the independence of judges.
Let me ask you one final question, please, Professor. You say in your motivation that my scientific activity is directly connected with activity of the judicial system. Will you help explain that to me just a little bit further, please?
The topic of my PhD thesis is classification of tactical mistakes in the work of investigators. And tactical mistakes in the future transform into procedural mistakes, which affects the correctness of the decisions made by judges, especially in criminal proceedings. That is why, while working on my PhD thesis, I used the open registry of court decisions, and I paid attention to acquittals. In my opinion, it shows us that we did have problems during pretrial investigations, and I studied these cases, I studied these proceedings. I studied the negative aspects of pre-trial investigation, which resulted in acquittals. It was probably done because of lack of evidence or violation of some of the procedures or regulations of investigation procedures. So I do believe that in this respect, my activities were in some way connected.
Did you find that there was questionable behavior or even corrupt behavior in many of the cases that you researched for your PhD?
No, I haven't seen any cases like that. I only studied the materials, and it's hard to get an idea about some corrupt behavior of a judge, let's say, by studying the documents alone. It wasn't the question of a fair and just decision. I was looking into issues of pre-trial investigation, which in the end affected or could have affected the decision made by the judge. And in the majority of cases, those were acquittals.
Okay. Professor, thank you again for your participation in this competition. And let me turn this over to my colleague, Judge Verlanov.
Thank you. Oleksii, good morning. So let me come back to the question asked by my colleague Robert about you getting a phone call with regards to one candidate who is part of this selection. And you told us that in the future there should be a scrupulous review of this candidate. In your opinion, when assessing such a candidate, what criteria may cause you reasonable doubt? And can you please explain why? In my opinion, the criteria of impartiality and independence of this candidate should come into play. And how are you going to assess it? I'm sorry, the quality of the sound is not the best. Could you sit a bit closer to the mic? Yes, thank you. Yes, in my opinion, we need to pay attention to impartiality and independence in this case. And here, there may be a potential conflict of interest between me and the other commissioners. I didn't ask you about that. How would you assess this candidate? So, should you have this situation, or maybe it wasn't you who received the phone call, it was a different commissioner who informed you about receiving a phone call with regards to a specific candidate, and which criteria during your assessment can give rise to reasonable doubt? That was my question. I don't think that there is only one specific criteria that we will have to assess. We have to assess all of them. Yes, that's something that you have explained to us. Scrupulous assessment, but which of those criteria results in reasonable doubt or can result in your reasonable doubt? The criteria of independence and impartiality of the candidate. Thank you, that's clear. Since we are approaching the end of the interview, I am passing the floor to our chair. Thank you, Sergei.
No? No.
Oleksii, your interview is coming to an end. Can you please summarize everything that we've discussed today? Is there anything of importance that you'd like to tell us? Perhaps you forgot to say something while answering our questions. Maybe there are new ideas that you've come up with during the interview. Let me add a couple of things about the final question. It's the criteria of ethicality. It's important to assess ethics during the selection of future judges. But in conclusion, I would like to say that I'm really grateful to the Commission, grateful for the high level of this selection. Thank you for constant communication. Thank you for the interesting questions that you've asked. Of course, we cannot choose where we are born, but I'm proud of being Ukrainian, and I'm ready to defend its freedom, territorial integrity until my final breath. I'm going to be doing that for our future, for the future of our children, who I hope will live in a free state where they will have the right to just trial. Definitely, the judiciary reform is doomed if we are not supported by the public. And I wish future judges, and I wish the future HQCJ to have such a high level of credit, such a high level of trust that the armed forces of Ukraine are currently enjoying. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Thank you, Oleksii, and thank you for your service. This is the end of your interview. Good luck to you and take care. Goodbye.